Almost 30 years ago, a 27-year-old woman decided to quit a high-paying job as a management consultant at McKinsey to become a teacher. On paper, it didn't make sense. She had everything people usually wanted: status, money, a clear career path, but she left it all behind to pursue her passion. She didn't know at the time, but this one decision would set her on a path to spend the rest of her life answering one simple question: what makes someone successful and why? Her name is Angela Duckworth, and recently I've been reading her book, Grit. At the age of 27, she let go of her career in consulting to become a teacher in high school. And there she noticed something very, very strange. Some of the students in her class naturally picked things up more quickly. They were talented. But over time, she quickly realized many of them weren't performing as well as she expected. Instead, she noticed a second group of students that far exceeded her expectations. Those who were initially underperformers, but were attentive in class every day. They asked questions, they took notes, and some even stayed back after class. In other words, they worked hard. And that gave her the first hint that maybe how we predict success is all wrong. Over the years, she noticed this pattern again and again. She became more and more convinced that effort rather than talent was the key to success. Intent to find out whether this was true, she eventually left teaching to become a psychologist. Since then, she has spent the past 20 years studying kids and adults in a range of difficult settings, from salespeople in tough markets, to teachers in underfunded schools, cadets at military academies, and even winners of spelling bees. Every single time, she asked the same question: who is successful here and why? And time again, she found the biggest predictor of success was not IQ, not EQ, not your SAT score, but rather something she calls grit. Angela is now a professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and she has degrees in Harvard, Oxford, and the University of Pennsylvania in both neuroscience and psychology. She even won a MacArthur Genius Award, which is a huge grant given to people doing groundbreaking work in their field. And all of this sets the stage for the big question: what exactly is grit? Angela defines grit as passion and perseverance, and the ability to stick to your long-term goals no matter what. Angela's research took her to some surprising places, including one of the toughest training grounds in the United States, West Point Military Academy. Every year, over 14,000 applicants begin the admissions process. Of those, only about 4,000 are actually successful in getting a nomination. This is then whittled down via a range of academic and physical assessments to a final 1,200. I was quite curious, and I actually went onto the West Point website, and yeah, there's a lot that they ask you to do. The most bizarre thing being a letter from the Vice President of the United States. But what you're left with is 1,200 elite cadets who are committed and ready to take on any challenge. And yet, despite all the effort it takes to get admitted, 1 in 5 drop out before graduation, with the vast majority doing so within the first 2 months. Now, these first 2 months are intense, as you're put through something called the Beast Barracks. Every day is 16 plus hours, there's no weekends, no breaks, so you're pushed to your limit physically, mentally, and socially. So who makes it through? This is something that psychologists at West Point have been trying to figure out for decades. They tried testing for IQ, for EQ, for physical ability, and eventually they came up with something called the whole candidate score, which included many of those elements, as well as things like SAT scores, high school rank, leadership potential, and so on. And it was great at identifying who had the potential to succeed, but not who actually did. The only consistent predictor was something Angela called the grit scale, which was a simple questionnaire that asked cadets about how they approach challenges, how they respond to setbacks, and whether they stick with goals long term. And it turns out that the ones who made it through weren't always the smartest, they were just the ones who refused to quit. Does talent not matter then? No, of course it does. Not all of us can become Olympians regardless of how much time we put into it. But what she's saying is that we tend to overestimate how much talent matters compared to effort when it comes to success. Talent is how quickly your skills improve when you invest effort, and achievement is what happens when you take those skills and use them. She puts it in a simple formula: talent times effort equals skill, and skill times effort equals achievement. Where talent counts once, effort counts twice. Okay, so grit matters, but is there any way to actually improve our grit? Thankfully, there is, and Angela notes 4 main things. The first is interest. You have to genuinely enjoy what you do. You don't have to like every part. For example, you can love teaching, but not like marking homework. But if you're passionate about what you do, you'll be more committed to it. Next is practice. Once you've found an interest, the perseverance comes from trying to do things better than you did yesterday. And that means working on your weaknesses, not just your strengths. For example, Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, is actually slower than most people in the first 0.5 seconds of his start. So he spends years drilling that exact weakness. Then it's purpose. It's the belief that what you're doing really matters. For example, if you're a bricklayer, well, you're not just laying bricks, but rather you're building a home for someone to live in. And finally, it's hope. The belief that your effort will pay off even when things get tough. That ability to persevere through setbacks and keep moving forward is the most integral part of grit. By developing ourselves in those areas, grit grows. And here's the thing. Grit isn't about doing 60, 70-hour weeks and burning out after a few months. It's about consistently showing up with effort for years and letting that perseverance compound over time. That kind of long-term perseverance is exactly what we tend to underestimate. Angela points this out with an example from psychologist Chia-Chung Tsai. She asked participants to evaluate two entrepreneurs. One was described as a natural, someone who achieved success through innate talent, and the other as a striver who had succeeded through persistence, learning from failure, and sheer effort. On paper, both had identical achievements and track records. Prior to doing this, she had asked the participants if they thought talent or effort was more important for an entrepreneur. Here's the really interesting part. Even though participants consistently said that effort and hard work are the keys to success, when they were finally asked who was more likely to succeed or who they would hire, most people chose the natural. In fact, the striver had to demonstrate around 4 more years of experience and have about $40,000 more in startup capital to be considered equally likely to succeed. It's a crazy example of just how strong our bias for talent really is. Finally, I want to leave you with the title of a study done on elite swimmers by sociologist Dan Chambliss. The title of the study was called The Mundanity of Excellence. The title of the article speaks for itself. Success and the most impressive achievements are often simply the result of countless ordinary actions, done consistently over time. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.